Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on supporting students beyond tuition, a look at food and housing insecurity on college campuses. Welcome. I'm your host, Grace Mosley, and I'm a policy analyst with the Florida College Access Network. And we have some great guest presenters joining us today. I'm thrilled to welcome Erin Leduc, the director of the Center for Women and Men at Daytona State College. Erin serves on several college-wide committees to address retention as well as community boards and task forces to include Volusia County Human Services and the Freedom 7 Human Trafficking Task Force. Erin recently published a blog post in Scholarly Teacher on the topic of food scarcity on campus affects learning in the classroom. Erin presented in 3 national conferences last year on the topic of serving the vulnerable and underserved with a focus on Daytona State College's 10-point plan approach to serve our hungry and homeless students. Erin is a wife and a mom of 2 athletes and loves to watch and support her kids from the sidelines. And when she's not doing that, her hobbies include photography and crafting. I'm also pleased to welcome John Alaska. John Alaska is a native of Jacksonville, where he currently serves as the University of North Florida's student body president. As president, Mr. Alaska oversees a $4.5 million budget, represents the interests of 17,000 students, and strives to integrate student involvement and affairs into the academic mission of the university. He is working towards a bachelor's in political science with a concentration in public policy, and Mr. Alaska has previously worked with the UNF Environmental Center, developing their annual report, and has served as a communications consultant to many local and statewide campaigns. Welcome, John. We are so excited to have you. Now, before we dive into today's presentation, a few housekeeping items. First of all, we welcome your questions. This is all about learning. Excuse me, sorry guys, jumped ahead of myself there. Um, um, this is all about learning together, so please submit your questions in the chat box, which you should see on the right side of your screen if you are viewing from a desktop computer. And we will also allot time at the end of today's webinar for our guest presenters to answer questions, but you can submit them at any time, and I encourage you to do so. And second, please share what you are learning on your favorite social media platform. On Twitter, you can find us at Florida College Access, and please use the hashtag FCAN. And finally, this webinar is being recorded. All materials will be available within a week of the recording, although you can find handouts in the handouts section of your control panel now. So for those of you who are new to our webinars, I'd like to welcome you, and for those returning, welcome back. Here's a little information about us in case you happen to be new to our work. The Florida College Access Network is the heart of a movement to ensure today's students are prepared for tomorrow's jobs. And here you can see our mission and our vision. I'm going to continue onward. We accomplish our work in 3 primary ways. The first is by supporting the formation and growth of local college access networks, which are made up of community leaders coming together to create solutions and partnerships to support local talent development. LCAN serve about 81% of the state's population. Secondly, we publish research and data on student-centered practices and policy opportunities to strengthen Florida's talent pool. And lastly, through our statewide initiatives that help schools and community groups with free resources that support students in continuing their education after high school. So before we get into the nitty-gritty data on food and housing insecurity on college campuses, it's important that we all know what we're talking about when we use these terms. In the context of the data I'm about to share with you, pardon me, food insecurity may be defined as the limited or uncertain availability of nutritionally adequate and safe food, or the ability to acquire such food in a safe manner. So this actually broadens the definition to include not only hungry students, but also students who can't afford nutritional food. And then housing insecurity is defined as the challenges surrounding housing, including the inability to pay rent, utilities, fees, or the need to move frequently. So this would apply to students who couch surf or sublease new apartment spaces every few months because they can't afford or qualify for their own lease. And these definitions come right from the Hope Center's Real College Survey, which I will be sure to link you with at the end of today's webinar. Before we get into today's fabulous presenters, I just want to set the scene by giving you all a look at data from the college and university's Basic Needs and Security Report conducted by the Hope Center, formerly known as the Hope Lab. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with their work, the Hope Center has been conducting surveys and producing data on post-secondary students experiencing housing or food insecurity since 2013, when they were known as the Wisconsin Hope Lab. In 2015, they expanded their work to take on data collection for other states to provide a more complete look at the issue. So since 2015, they have surveyed about 167,000 students attending 101 community colleges and 64 four-year institutions. That is a lot of data. So this year, the Hope Center surveyed nearly 86,000 students at 90 two-year colleges and 33 four-year institutions from 24 states. And then as you can see on the map, the states in that deep orange color were included in the 2018 survey that we're going to be discussing today. So that includes Florida, but I also just want to take a second to point out the variety of states they surveyed. We have coastal states represented, rural communities, states with higher immigrant representation, states with Republican leadership, states with Democratic leadership, and so on and so forth. So you can also see how recently each state has had a college participate in the survey. And as you can see, most have conducted the survey at some point. The ones that you see in gray there are going to be the ones that they have never conducted a survey in, but soon, hopefully. So 45% of students had experienced some form of food insecurity within the month prior to being surveyed, and that number could possibly be greater because we often conflate hunger with the college experience. So students may not recognize that eating top ramen 4 to 5 nights a week would qualify as food insecure, but rather they might just identify as the normal college kid. And this may also apply to students who are getting multiple meals from campus booths or events. So we kind of, consider it the norm in our culture surrounding college for students to be hungry or, getting food from different events instead of actually having a reliable source of nutrition. So the students I'm describing may not identify as food insecure because they're technically not starving, and every kid in college is hungry, right? Taking a deeper look at the issue, we can see that the issue is even larger in two-year institutions where we know that we have more students balancing a full-time job or a family. And then we see the unfortunate statistic that only 57% of students who identified as food insecure were actually receiving any form of public assistance to help bridge that gap. So hearkening back to my earlier point, because we drive home the concept that all students are broke, students may not immediately recognize or even be aware of the benefits that they could be eligible for. And then when we're looking at housing insecurity and how many students experience that, it's even worse. The housing situation for students is remarkably worse. It's 56% of students who were housing insecure within the past year, which leaves less than half of our college students in a secure home situation, which was a pretty big shock to me. Again, you can see a bit of a trend emerge where the need is greater in two-year institutions. And you can see that reflected by the statistic that 60% of those students identify as housing insecure. Furthermore, we see that 17% of students actually identify as homeless. And once again, that actual number could be even higher because a lot of students who are homeless don't identify as homeless because they're living with friends, they are couch surfing, and we all know that homelessness can be very heavily stigmatized, and so they might not feel comfortable sharing that information or identify with it, even though it may be their reality. And so if you'd like to see more information about the poll, go ahead and you can click on this link right here at hopeforcollege.com. And that's where you can find all the data I've listed, as well as some other forms of data. They break it down a little bit more based on region and whatnot. So you can find more information about participating institutions and whatnot. I think we can all clearly see what a serious issue this is for our students and just how heavy and important the Hope Center's work is for shedding a light on the problem. So now that we've briefly touched on the sheer pervasiveness and scale of the need, I'd like to welcome our first guest presenter, Erin Leduc, to share how she's been able to support students using the Real College Survey experiencing basic needs insecurity at Daytona State College. Thank you so much for being with us today, Erin. All right, Erin, you should be good to talk.
Thank you, Grace. Okay, so welcome everyone and thank you for the opportunity. So I'm here along with our homeless liaison, Zoe Messenger, and we're going to talk about hunger and homelessness and how we serve our students with a collaborative approach at Daytona State College. Next slide. Go ahead with the next slide, Grace. Thank you. So just to give you a little snapshot into Daytona State College, we provided some of the numbers. So I won't spend too much time here, but just if you're comparing your institution, when you think about some of the things and the scope of what you can potentially do on your campus, this is how we I'll go into more detail of how we accomplish this across our 7 campuses. Next slide. Again, here's another, just more Daytona State by the numbers, comparing our full and part-time, gender. We have a strong dual enrollment headcount and some other stats. Next slide, please. So we were a part of the Wisconsin Hope Lab survey in 2015, and so what we're going to do today is show you that data, and then we're going to do a comparison because again we're a part of the survey, and you can see the comparison snapshot between the 2 surveys, and I'll talk about what we did in between. So we saw, as you can see, 73% of our students reported food insecurity, a very high number, and 67 reported having spent at least one night unsure where they would sleep. And again, as this sort of emphasizes Grace's data. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we saw the data, of course, we were all very shocked, and we began our call to action. So we were led initially by our Board of Trustee chairperson, Faru Husseini, who is very passionate about Volusia County children not going hungry. We have a VCAN 2020 initiative that you could look up also, but that she extended that into the college as our chairwoman of the Board of Trustees. And so we sat down and we started a 10-point plan. So the handout that you have access to is a blank template for the 10-point plan. So if anything you hear today you're interested in implementing, this gives you a nice way to sort of fill in the blanks and see where, who, and what, and where. So first order of business was a one-stop shop. So it was very important that we had one place where students could go to, so it wasn't confusing for staff or faculty or for students as where can I go for help if I'm dealing with hunger or homelessness. So we had this one-stop shop, and they said the Center for Women and Men is a perfect opportunity. So a little bit about the Center for Women and Men. We're an entirely grant-funded department. We have some other programs here that focus on our most vulnerable students, and that's why the center became the perfect place. So, for example, we have the C Campus grant. Child care access means parents in school. We've had that for 17 years, and we just were awarded another 4 years, so we're excited about that. So we're helping our student parents. You can look on our website for more information and for a video for more information about what we do, but we have a Fresh Start program where we're helping anybody in the community, doesn't matter what age. We have 17 to 70 in that class, get into the college, either get into college or get back into school if they've had any hardship. So we're doing a lot of life skills and sort of enrollment step-by-step in there. We have a new directions program that we fund with Carl D. Perkins, helping our vocational students get uniforms, books, transportation, and childcare. And so those are just some of the things we're doing in the center. So oftentimes students will come for one thing and they'll realize that we have so much more. So the call to action back in 2015-16 was the one-stop shop, and then we began just giving out food. So we started off with our Falcon Fuel, we're the Falcons, so we started off just giving out snacks. And then we got to know our students, and our students got to know us. The trust was built, the relationships were fostered, and that mentorship took place. And we were able to figure out what else our students needed through that process. To fund, the question that always comes up, how do we fund our food pantry? We like I said, we started off with snacks, and then we also had have a food pantry, and then we have extended that into a lunch. So students can come and get a lunch, and in every bag lunch, we put our 2-on-1 information, and we put our local food pantry information in case they're headed into the weekend and need more. So we can go ahead to the next slide, please. Okay, so like I said, so those relationships were being built, and we were getting to know our students, and they were talking to us, and not all homeless students need the same thing, or hungry students. So the services, as I mentioned before, this is a collaborative approach. We started with inside our departments and talking to each other, and we created a system where Zoe, the homeless liaison, can call over to the gym and set up for our students to get a shower. Also, she can call over to our cosmetology and barbering program and enable a student to get free haircuts as often as they need. Votran is our transportation agency, and they provide us 31-day bus passes for our homeless students. We also have, once kind of the word gets out of what we're doing, the local support started to come in, and we have a fund in the foundation, and that's set up basically for our discretion so that we can use that for things such as book bags, school supplies, test fees, background checks. But also what Zoe does is she's established a relationship with 2 laundromats in the area, and so we'll set up for students to get laundry vouchers from her, and she'll give them the soap and the dryer sheet, and they can go over with their voucher to the laundromat and get their clothes washed every week, or they can wash their clothes every week. So things like that. We just wanted to remove all barriers that we could to students just feeling a new normal, feeling okay, feeling clean, feeling okay, and able to focus in the classroom. So we're trying to just knock down these barriers. Another thing we have in the center is a lending library for students to borrow a textbook for the semester, so our homeless students are able to access that. And I think I hit everything on the list, but those are some of the things that we've done in collaborating with our staff and faculty here on campus. All of our homeless students receive a faculty staff mentor. That happens in collaboration with our admissions department in making sure that happens. And so they have someone to talk to. A lot of times it becomes Zoe because that's their go-to person to get their bus pass or their laundry voucher. But we have other staff and faculty on hand to help support in some of those career goals. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So we wanted to take a look at the data. So all of these things that we've implemented, we really wanted to see, are we moving the needle? So we can see here with the numbers that our numbers went to 50% food insecure, 59 housing insecure, and 19, similar to the national 17 respondents were homeless in the previous year. But what was seriously shocking, again, it doesn't get less shocking, but 69% of respondents at Daytona State experienced at least one of those forms of basic need insecurity. Next slide. And this is showing you the visual. So when we saw this, we were, as much as those numbers are frightening, this was our hope that what we're doing is actually seemingly it's working. And so this really kind of had us crying tears of joy. As you can see the numbers, so in the blue was where we began, and in the red is where we are. So we can see that some of the things that we've implemented are actually helping our students get back on their feet. And so that's real work. And so we're really proud of this. And next slide. So this is just really interesting when we dig into the food insecurity that our students are experiencing. So I really encourage you, if you're not involved with #RealCollege in this Hope Lab survey, it's a really good idea to just get to know your students and figure out first what are you working with, what are the needs, and then you let them lead the way. So we see that they're worried about not having enough money to get to the next meal, not eating nutritiously, as Grace mentioned earlier, cutting meals in half. I have a story about a student that rations his meal card swipes, and he'll get sandwiches in bulk and then put it in the freezer so that he has enough for the weekends. They're very savvy, and they're survivors, and they have real grit, which always surprises me and impresses me. But this is a real good snapshot of where the need is, and so I'd encourage you to look at this at your institution. Next slide, please. So this is where we're talking about our homelessness here on college, on ours. So this is just a snapshot of our numbers for 17, 18, some interesting answers there, some of which we're not surprised at because we talked to our students and we know they're living with friends. And as Grace mentioned, they don't always understand that means that they are homeless. So to tackle homelessness, we do have the Hope Place shelter just several blocks away from our Daytona Beach campus, where they have designated, it's a fairly new shelter in the area, and they've designated, you know how many beds? 20, I think so. It's 24 beds for our students who are 18 to 16, well, up to age 24, without children. And so what this looks like is, it looks actually better than my dorm room in college. So they have the laundry on facility, they have everything they need, but it's separate from the family shelter, but they also have some tutoring and some counseling and something, access to services at the shelter. And it's always able to get our students into that shelter in a very quick amount of time. So that's that community collaboration of working together to help our students with the housing. We're looking at Daytona State, we're very excited to be focused on dorms in the next couple of years going up, and so we'll be able to help some students. We don't know what that looks like yet for those students, but at least if they're on financial aid, we can help them get into that dorm. We know that's probably an option in the future for us. But in the meantime, we're able to work with our local shelters, and we were able to, collaborate and get our students in a safe shelter where they're around other students that are in the same situation, and they're helping each other, and it's really making a difference. Next slide, please. So I just thought this was interesting when I saw our numbers and just how many of the needs that our students have, really, we had an impact in the center. So we have a very close relationship with career services. We have to, a lot of our students do have to work, as many of us worked when we were in college, and that's a part of just real life now. So we are getting students work study opportunities, and Zoe and I could pick up the phone and get a student a work study opportunity, and we do very often. We are helping them get part-time jobs and working really closely with our career services department, and they stay in touch with us. Housing related, like I said, Zoe can pick up the phone and get a student into the shelter relatively quickly. BoTran is our transportation service, along with and our food pantry, which includes our snacks, grab-and-go snacks. Any student at all can grab a snack and go, so their stomach isn't rumbling through their next class. And through our child care related services through C Campus, as well as our New Directions program. And then when I look over to a couple into safety related at 4.6, we have a grant we were just awarded again from Department of Justice, from the Office of Violence Against Women, to focus on domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. And I think when I see safety related, obviously it's not specific, but when I see safety related, knowing that our students, this being a commuter school, that these students are going through some of these things at home and in their dating and domestic lives, I think of DV. So while that might not be related, it's just something to keep in mind. Next slide, please. So again, it's all about the collaborative approach, and so it really starts with a one-stop shop and then letting everybody know what you do. It's really important that I get students here because we do ask them to sign in, and I'm collecting data every day about how many students are coming in and what service they're receiving when they do come into the center, because we're doing so much. But I make it my job to get in front of every staff and faculty member twice a year, each semester, to let them know what we're doing, who we are, how to contact us. And then what we do on our other campuses is we have our counselors and accessibility coordinators. They are the liaison between their campus and our services, so we can pretty much get any student on any campus, any of our services or any support for any of the things that we do. One of the other things I didn't mention is we have a clothing closet on campus, and we've had that for almost 45 years. So we're helping students get career ready. A lot of times this will help our homeless students as well. So if you visit our website at Daytona State College, you click on Center for Women and Men, you can see our video with some of our staff explaining the things that we do. And that video goes into the online orientation, just to give you some ideas on how to get the word out. And it also gets embedded into all the syllabus, the master syllabus. So that's a great way for staff and faculty to share with students. And you're getting that online orientation. They're at least getting a snapshot. But because we are a 2-year, we do have 4-year bachelor's programs, but because we are a commuter school, it's hard to get in front of every student. So we do our best that way, but it is imperative that I get in front of every staff and faculty, because they are the ones that really see students every day and can really make the difference. So I talked about Hope Center. Halifax Urban Ministries is where our shelter is. Hope Place, the Hope Place shelter is where some of our students are housed. And I mentioned our domestic abuse partners. I'm on the board for Volusia County Human Services, and that's been a wonderful partnership. And then it's important to be a part of your system of care. And Positive Pathways, I couldn't say enough about the great work that they do. And so we are now very much working together to help our students who have aged out of foster care, that oftentimes are also homeless. So we have to be really mindful and taking good care of those students as well. And then again, in partnership with Educate Tomorrow, who's working with side by side with Positive Pathways to help those students. And of course, your United Way partners are really important in this puzzle. So thank you so much. I think our next slide is in conclusion.
So we're going to show a video real fast. And if you are someone who is listening through your telephone, you might just want to turn up your computer volume a little bit, because the volume is only going to play from the computer. Right. All right, we are having a few technical issues with the video, so I will be sure to send it out to everyone. I am so sorry about that. We're just having a few technical problems with that, so I do apologize. I'll be sure to get everyone a link, and I'll let you go ahead and close out. Sorry about that, Erin. Sorry about that.
No problem, Grace. These things happen. That's okay. I do want to say thank you for that. That video is a great video of just some of the things that it's a couple of our students, but I do want to mention it's not great representation of the average homeless student at Daytona State, but of course our students are very prideful. And one thing that I am adamant about, when a student comes into the center, they will only receive from us. They will never be asked for anything. So I don't ask our students to be a part of anything like that could exploit them or embarrass them. So it's a great video with a couple of our students. They are older students, not as prideful. They really wanted to be a part of what we do, and so we integrated them into that video. But thank you again, Grace, and we welcome any questions that you have at the end.
Thank you so much, Erin. Thank you for sharing all of this with us. And thank you for all of the great work that you are doing at Daytona State College. And a reminder to those who have submitted questions to Erin that we will be holding those for the end of our webinar, but thank you for those. And please keep submitting any questions that you may have as they come to you. And next up, I would like to introduce John Alaska, the student body president of the University of North Florida, to discuss some of the innovative ways or the innovative steps that they're taking to address these issues on their campus. And thank you so much for being here with us, John.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So my name is John Alaska, and I'm the student body president at UNF. UNF has a population of 17,000, and our student government has a budget of around $4.2 million. And so I'm going to sort of break down a little bit how we use that budget to help alleviate food insecurity. Next slide, please. So I first want to talk about sort of data-driven needs. And so while we meet with students often, and we know there's, empirical stories told, that statistical data is really the way that you get to convince people, especially administration, of some of the issues going on. And so each month, our student government conducts an Osprey Voice, and these are online surveys on topics decided by students. And if you want to go ahead and click the case study, this was one of our really successful roundtable surveys that we do at the end of each election for student government. And so it had actually a relatively low turnout compared to our bigger surveys, as we just had one with about 1,400 responses. But it showed that 83% of students were made uncomfortable by on-campus preachers and speakers, with 47% saying that they were extremely uncomfortable. And what we were able to do is pin the statistical significances from the survey that was really important. So for instance, the difference between straight students and LGBT students, and actually pinpoint instances of alleged harassment. And so we are now taking these results, and we've talked with other student body presidents across Florida, and we're working with the UNF Vice President of Student Affairs to sort of create anti-harassment policies that we hope can be applied on college campuses across the state. Next slide. And so some other data that we have is that around 31% of UNF students live in poverty. Like Grace said, that could be higher, but this data was taken from institutional research in regards to Pell Grants and financial aid, stuff like that. We can anticipate around 300 visits per month to the Linda Wing Food Pantry, which is ran by student government. And we've had roughly $50,000 in monetary donations to Linda Wing since its inception. And so we were gaining a lot of traction. And so we sort of took all this data and formulated a plan around our pantry. So next slide. So currently Linda Wing is in an administrative building off campus. So you really have to get on a bus or driving your car to reach the pantry, which really isn't the best practice for student services. So we sort of made the executive decision that we were going to move our food pantry to the core of campus, to the student union. And we would utilize this as a way to integrate it into campus life and expand hours, while also making sure we balance anonymity with access. And then we were going to create a pop-up mobile pantry that could be used for high traffic events and times. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We were going to engage with university development and alumni to expand our operating capabilities through donations so that we don't have to increase student fees or reallocate fees. And then we were going to create programs that were going to reduce stigma regarding food insecurity. Really what we have seen through a lot of scholarly studies is that a student, or really anyone, only needs one reason to not visit a welfare or social service location. And so for a lot of our students, that's the location. And so next slide. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our pop-up pantry. We call it Poppy. And so it's a mobile kiosk that can be moved around campus as needed. And we use the pantry as a way to destigmatize the pantry. But we use it for grab bags during move-in and finals when students are too busy to get groceries. And that's our director and assistant director. And what's really important and what I emphasize with every administration I talk to is that no one knows students like students. So engage your students, but more importantly, hire your students. If you have a budget, there is no reason that a student service should not have paid input from a student, particularly one that has utilized a similar service before. And so our pop-up pantry is completely student ran and every position is occupied by a student. Next slide. And so we have a few strategic partnerships that allow us to fundraise and also operate at such a high level. So we use, like Aaron was talking about, our university foundation, and we utilize the fundraising tool and alumni engagement and university development to continuously replenish that account. Not only are we funding the move through the account, but we also fund the food. So for instance, Feeding Northeast Florida is where we buy the majority of our food using our foundation account for the pantry. And so this is the way that we ensured that not only that the pantry is stocked with more than just cans, but also that we don't have to always ask students for donations, because what we found is that when you have donation drives with students, it makes them think that the pantry is not for them. And so if a student donates to the pantry, they're less likely to utilize the pantry when they need it. We partner with Food Fighters, and Food Fighters is a group in the UNF Environmental Center. They reclaim leftover food from our UNF cafe and repackage it for the AIDS Network in Lindewing, and this stays in our frozen section. The frozen foods are loved by students because there's no preparation needed. You can just heat it up in the microwave, so it's great for on-the-go or especially on-campus eating. We also partner with Osier Gardens to receive produce, and we get produce and meat from Feeding Northeast Florida as well. But Osier Gardens gives us produce so that we have not only Pop-Tart, but also arugula, because students need a balance. And then we utilized a program called Osprey Eyes, which is a secret shopper program that reviews UNF offices and services. They reviewed Lindewing, and the biggest complaint was the location. And so we didn't have to survey students who use Lindewing because that becomes an anonymity issue, but we were able to partner with the university to still get really good data on some of the complaints around the location, services, and products we provided. Next slide. And I wanted to go over because every so often I get asked questions about how to market to students, because they often, administration often doesn't really know the best way or wants to know the best way. And first off, that's why you hire a student to do your marketing. But also, it's really important when you are talking about resources that you don't create an office and then don't market it, because the worst thing to do is allocate resources to something that doesn't get used. So in the lower left-hand corner, my left at least, you'll see a campus map and student resources. This is the same card on both sides. And so we give that to every freshman that comes on our campus. Next to that is a example of a door hanger we use on our campus dorms. And we used it to advertise student government, but you could use it to really advertise any services you provide. And then you'll also notice that everything is really identifiable under the same brand. That's important to be very recognizable to students. Another thing we're working on that I wanted to briefly touch on is a Canvas page for student resources. So whether you use Canvas or Blackboard, you are able to create a course that would just be for resources, and every student can be enrolled in it. And so all it is a Canvas page with tabs with a list of, you might have a tab for mental health, and then the counseling center would be there, and all your other programs for mental health, or same with food insecurity, and every student would have access to that. And that's a great tool to utilize because while paper advertising is important, digital advertising is really where to meet students. Next slide. And that's it.
All right, thank you so much, John. So now we are gonna get to some of your questions. So give me just 1 second here. So the first question is for Erin, and it was to address how transportation was arranged. So give me just 1 second. And Erin, if you could explain more about how you've arranged transportation for people to get to the center.
Okay, that did involve administration. So I think there's so many staff and faculty on the campus that want to get involved and help, but it really has to start with your senior administration and Votran being our transportation agency. This was a call from our president, Dr. Labasso, over to Votran, CEO at the time, to enable this, and Votran has been more than willing to provide 31-day bus passes for our homeless students.
Okay, thank you so much. And then we have another one for you, Erin, which is, do you have any advice on assisting online students with food or housing insecurity, particularly if you have students who are kind of transient from one school to the next?
I do. I want to go back to the transportation one, because we will do, oftentimes, I also have a wish list that I keep on the website, and people ask me all the time, what do you need? And for a student with a car who might be living in a car, very often they need gas cards. There's one gas station in particular that will sell gas cards that are for gas only. So we focus on those. So that and 1 and 3 day bus passes we get through donations, or if somebody were to say, Erin, I've had people say, here's $100, use it with what you need, and I'll buy emergency 3-day bus passes with that. So those come through donations and things. So just to wrap up that last one. So we just implemented, I want to say a little less than a year ago, we have an online retention coordinator here at the college. I know retention is long been the buzzword and what everybody is focused on. So we have an online retention coordinator who she's actually a also an advisor on the go in the Career Center. So really quick access to her. We've built a good relationship with her. So she oversees our online students, and she will message us or give us a call if a student needs something online. I know we're kind of thinking, because if a student is, a lot of times an online student, if they get to us or they're to their faculty, will say, what is your closest regional campus? And we will make sure that we get anything, whether it's food, books, clothing, a bus pass, sent over to the closest regional campus to that student for them to pick it up. And we'll do it strategically with someone we know is going to have a good conversation with. It might be the counselor. It might be the enrollment person that kind of is a veteran that can dig a little deeper and help that student have those great conversations and maybe become a mentor.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Erin. And then we have a question for John, which is, John, you had mentioned hiring students to be a part of the process and a part of the programs that you guys are having on campus. So what does that process look like, and how do you ensure that there's a robust student voice involved in that process?
Okay, cool.
Sorry, go ahead, John.
So thank you. You're good. We do a few things in student government, because the issue a lot of times with when you hire students, sort of transient in nature. And so a lot of the way our model looks is that you have a professional advisor for your program that doesn't oversee the students. It's not a direct report, but guides them and keeps the knowledge from year to year in a sort of an institution. So first, that's sort of how we keep continuity. But working with your HR is definitely a start to hiring students. Could you repeat again the question?
Sure. It's just how do you how does the process of hiring students go? And then how do you ensure that those students, their voice is being taken into consideration in those programs?
Right. And so I would definitely talk to your human resources about budgets and what that looks like at your institution. I know student government is a bit different, where all of our employees are students that at least I oversee. And so that would sort of be the first step. And in terms of making sure that they have a seat at the table, I don't know the types of institutions that are listening in, but I know public institutions, for instance, it is a law that a student must serve on the board of trustees and vote. And so I'm a trustee member. And that is a great thing to implement at, maybe some of your private institutions or your community colleges with your student government. That's one way to make sure students have a voice. Surveys are an excellent way because, as much as we won't respect the Hope Center, you want sort of continuous data, so you can really track your progress, and putting them in leadership positions. I think the best thing about having students in leadership positions is that it in and of itself is good for the program, but it becomes a learning opportunity for that student. And you sort of see the transformation over time as they get real world experience while also, helping your program in sort of identifying really simple areas, whether it's marketing, location, or products that you're offering, if that answers
Thank you.
the question.
Thank you so much, John. All right, so now I have another one for Erin, and then this one is a data question. So we have a question that is considering the transient nature of students, is the number of students surveyed the same population, or is the sample surveyed those enrolled at the time of this survey?
That's a great question. So that survey went out to all students at the time of the survey. We always question the data as well. And is it, because of the title of the survey, is it more likely that those in need are going to click on it and answer the questions? I couldn't answer that. But it did go out to all students at the time of the survey.
Okay, thank you so much. And I have another one for you, which is, in what ways well, this is for both of you actually. If either of you would like to share, how are you providing for students during breaks, like spring break or on the weekends? How do you provide for students during times when classes may not be being held? And I guess let's start with John, and then we'll jump back over to you, Erin.
Sure. So we do a few things. During break, we keep our pantry open. And so the only time it's closed is really the last university day. And so because students leave and the universities keep running. And so we make sure that it's open the last possible moment it can be open. But we also have grab bags. And so for the duration of the break, we sort of prepare what a student might typically come every week for. So if it's for 2 weeks, we prepare grab bags with 2 weeks of products that are non-perishable, and then, things that can be frozen. And then to circle back, the pop-up pantry is a really useful tool because there are sometimes when a university is not on break, but students are unable to get to your resource. So during finals is a great example where they're going to be in the library, or during move-in, or they're going to be at the dorms. And so meeting students where they are is another really great tool because you can't always count on them to come to you.
All right, thank you. And Erin, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, very good question. So we make sure to load up our students with our food pantry. We also make sure to put the call out to staff and faculty a few weeks beforehand. We have, for instance, National Homeless and Hunger Week coming up in November. We do an activity called Pack the Pantry that our students, our SGA and our Quanta students get involved in, and they put the call to action to donate food, and then they literally pack our pantry, but they do it. They like go from one building to our building, handing things over one-on-one, and they create this human chain. So really just neat awareness things to pack the pantry in time for those breaks. And so again, the transportation is typically settled because of the 31-day pass. We make sure our students have that. Around Thanksgiving, we partner with Volusia County Schools, and we do a basket brigade where we are giving students an entire basket full of the Thanksgiving meal, a gift card, and some of those delivering them to their houses and things. It's a huge collaboration between Volusia County Schools and Daytona State College. And then I think the other part that John mentioned as well is the awareness, just having those conversations with students and saying, hey, keep in mind, a break is coming up and I want you to be planning for that, because so many students are not planning. I had a conversation not long ago with a student who didn't realize that he was headed over to from us to UCF, and he didn't realize that he'd have to think about these things, and he just assumed that things stayed open because now he's going to be living in a dorm and his homeless problems are solved. So having those conversations with your students and asking, are they ready, I think is step one.
All right, thank you so much. And then this one is also for you, Erin. Could you describe the staffing at the center, and particularly what skill sets have you found to be useful for those employees that you do staff at the center?
Ooh, great question. So my staff, like I said, is entirely grant funded. There's a little bit of match, but for the most part, everybody is grant funded. And basically, the grants that our grant team is amazing, and the grants they write for dictate what projects we have and what they're working on. But what I personally look for, obviously, some human service experience, but the teamwork is important, because there's so much that we do that isn't designated for anybody. That we just do it. The lending library, the clothing closet, and even the homeless services. I'm using just a half of Zoe. She works half on her C campus, and the other half is matched by the college, and so she's named homeless liaison, but she couldn't do that by herself. And so I really look for somebody who's going to fit our team. Someone who's trainable, who has the enthusiasm, that has the heart. They don't have to have a counseling background. They don't have to have a human service background, but they have to have that compassion to want to help, but also that firm but fair, code. And the teamwork is really number one for me.
Thank you. All right, so we have another question, and I think that, well, there's actually two, and I think that they kind of make sense to be asked together. So you can both answer. Is there a screening process done before aid is provided to the student? If so, what is that like? And then, do you provide any special considerations for adult students experiencing food and housing insecurity? So it's a two-parter. Is there a screening done? What is that like? And then what special considerations, if any, do you provide for adult learners? And I'll just let you continue, Erin, and then John, I'd love to hear from you in just a moment.
Sure. So we do have to have that process in place. And basically, for a student who is getting services, they would be on, a student who's homeless can be eligible for a homeless waiver, which enables them for a tuition waiver. So that process happens in admissions, and admissions is verifying the homelessness with the agency that is writing a letter on behalf for that student. So I'll give you an example. A student might say, I'm here for homeless services. I'm in the process of getting enrolled. I'm living in such and such shelter. And we'd say, do you have your letter yet? No, I don't. And we'd explain to them, okay, you need to get your letter to your shelter manager to write a letter saying, yes, you are in fact living in the shelter. And we want that for two reasons. We can't decide as a college who is and who isn't homeless. And we want our students to be working with our shelters and the experts in our community to help them get out of this situation, so that we're all wrapping around and making sure that they are with the experts, because we can't be all things. We're not. It's important to remember that and I have to remind my staff all the time, we aren't a social service agency. We're in the business of education. And so we want to make sure that they are with the social service experts in the community getting that support. So it enables the student to get that added support in the community. But that's when those emergency bus passes come into play, because we'll give a student a 3-day pass so they can get that business taken care of, so they can get around and get their letter and get back to us without too much trouble, so that we can process that tuition waiver and admissions, and then that enables them to get all the other services we described in the center. So that is our screening process. And the other part of the question was adult learners. We don't put an age limit on it. And so any student who's in a homeless situation that is able to verify that homeless situation, we don't, I don't know if you're talking about adult ed and maybe GED students, but as far as our adult learners at the college, we don't have a limit on our services. We do have, understanding and compassion for the different situations that do happen. I would say one of the programs we have for those students would be Fresh Start that I mentioned earlier. You can get more information about that on our website and see what we're doing there. But students can come in and do Fresh Start before, and then they're that much more likely to be retained, and they're more ready and more successful when they do hit college life as an adult learner.
All right. And then, John, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, so we are a little different. At our food pantry, we don't have a screening process. We do a card swipe to ensure they're a student, and we collect some demographic information for grants for Feeding Northeast Florida. But what I think is important to remember, homelessness programs are slightly different, but with your food pantry, chronic poverty does not equal food insecurity. You cannot be in poverty, or you could not be a Pell Grant student and still be food insecure. I'll give you an example that I share with everyone all the time. When the latest hurricane came through, the university closed. I didn't work and I didn't get paid. I went to the food pantry because I just had to choose between rent or food because I wasn't working. And I'm not chronically poor, but in that instance, I needed help. And so it's important that you don't try and equate things that aren't equal. And so that would be my 2 cents on that.
Thank you so much for that, John. And then I have one last question, and this one is for Erin. And so, Erin, the question is for you to please describe the activities and services that the faculty and staff mentors provide to the homeless students.
Great. So what we do is I'm part of the training for our staff and faculty mentors, and so we give them some suggestions, but we really don't give them rules. The mentorship relationship has to take place, it has to take shape at its own pace. But some of the things that I have done with my mentees is we sat down and we talked about a budget. That is so crucial that students we also talk about dates and deadlines. We do a lot of work of here, let me show you the website and how to navigate our website, how to get the answers to your questions if you're, but a lot of times, I work with a couple of student athletes. It depends on the student. You have to let the student lead the way, but we do offer that mentor training. I tell staff all the time, staff will say, I don't think I'm ready to be a mentor. I don't really know everything there is to know. And that doesn't matter. Being willing to pick up the phone and find the answer is all that matters, and having the heart to listen. You do more listening than you do talking. And then it's just a matter of, I don't know all the answers. But I know how to pick up the phone and ask and find the answer. And that's all it takes. So I think that's all that's important if you're hesitant about mentorship. Just let it take shape and let the student guide lead the way, but be willing to talk about finances. Don't be afraid to talk about money and planning. And the students want to know. We also work with student life, and we're helping with workshops because students have asked. They want to talk about money. They want to talk about budgeting. They want to talk about planning for a financially secure future.
All right, thank you so much. So that was all of our questions. I want to thank Erin and John for presenting today, and thank you everyone for joining us. Remember, you have a handout if you'd like to take advantage of that on more of Erin's 10-point plan that they're using at the center. And then also, I'm going to go ahead and send out the link to that video. We want to make sure that you all have an opportunity to see that because it really is powerful to hear the people who have benefited from their services speak about how it's changed their lives and college experience. So I'm going to be sure to send that out to you. Make sure to give that a look. And thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy your day.